Well, we're kicking off a brand new series today titled Collision. And I don't know for you, but maybe I'm not the only one. But have you ever felt this tension that kind of simmers underneath the surface? Maybe you've thought to yourself, does that guy even know that tension is simmering? Have you thought, well, what's Tri-County Church's stance when it comes to that tension? Have you had a friend leave Tri-County Church because of this tension? Or maybe you left another church and came to Tri-County Church because the tension. Have you ever wondered what to do with that tension? Well, before we get to the tension, and we'll get there quickly, I promise, there's two words that I just want to make sure we're all on the same page on. Those two words are grace, truth. What the Bible talks about when it comes to grace, that grace is a gift. It's extended to everyone. You just have to accept it. You have to receive it. And when it comes to truth is what's the guardrails that God has put in place. I mean, think about it like this. You're on a mountain road and they have those metal guardrails. You know those. And they're there to protect you because if you go across the guardrails, you're now down the cliff. You're rolling down the mountain. And God has put these guardrails in place so that we don't sin. Sin is on the other side. Sin is destruction. He's like, I've given you all the guardrails. Truth and grace. Grace is what saves us. The Apostle Paul writes it this way in Ephesians chapter 2. He goes, for it's by grace that you're saved through faith. Not of anything you've done, but it's a gift of God. Gift extended to you. You just got to receive it. And truth is what leads us. Jesus talked about that there's a wide gate and a narrow gate. The wide gate is what most people walk through, and it leads to a wide path that leads to, destruction. It's going over the side of the mountain. The narrow gate, few find it, leads to life. And God's truth is what, not only puts the guardrails up, but it's the path that He's leading us down. Grace is God's unmerited favor. Unmerited, we don't deserve it. We can't earn it. Again, it's a gift that saves. Favor. The first time this word favor or grace is used in the entire Bible, go all the way back to Genesis, and it's connected to Noah. And what we're told is that God found favor with Noah. God extended His grace to Noah. And if you know anything about the story of Noah, you talk about a broken, messy person. It's Noah. But yet, he found favor with God. And truth is God's standard of righteousness. That God has set the bar, the expectation, the framework for us to live within. God, perfect God, holy God, righteous God, who says, here's the guardrails. Anything outside of that is sin. And again, it leads to destruction. But within those guardrails, it's righteous. It's perfect. It's holy. It's what He's designed for you, for me, to live, to experience a life, not just about eternity, but to experience life to the full in this one life that you and I have to live. Now, so many times when it comes to grace, truth, what we do is we start playing a game. Now, you could pick any game, but let's just highlight the game Monopoly. My oldest daughter, Kiara, loves the game Monopoly. I'm a fierce competitor when it comes to Monopoly. Why? Because I want to crush everyone. I want to get every property I can. I want to get houses and then hotels, and I'm just going to crush my opponent. I mean, I'm a ruthless player. But if you've ever played Monopoly before or know someone who has, you know how the board's kind of set up. In two of the corners, you have free parking and you have go. When you pass go, you get $200. And early in the game, that's invaluable capital. Free parking is, how we played is any fee or assessment or penalty, all that cash goes in the middle of the board. And if you land on free parking, you get all the cash. Now, in the other two corners, you got jail and go to jail. And how do you go to jail? Well, yeah, if you land on go to jail, you go to jail. If you roll 3 doubles in a row, you go to jail. Or, and I think this is the worst way to get to jail, you draw a go directly to jail card. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. And whether it's community chest, the yellow card, or the orange chance card, they both have the go to jail card. But if you draw one of those, directly to jail. Now, again, if you've ever played Monopoly or know someone who has, how do you get out of jail? Well, you can get out of jail by rolling a double. That gets you out. You can pay $50. Or if you have one of these cards, the get out of jail free card, so you can play that immediately and get out of jail. Now, how does this get applied to the game that we play with grace and truth? Well, so many times. I know I've done this. I've talked to thousands of people over the years in and around church. And this is the game. This is a game that we messy people play when it comes to grace and truth. When it comes to grace, we treat it like we got a stack of get out of jail free cards. I can say whatever I want. Bam, play the card. I can look at whatever I want. Bam, play the get out of jail free card. I can do whatever I want to do. Bam, grace. I can skirt the law. Bam, grace. I can wander around in the gray. I mean, is it sin? Is it not sin? It doesn't matter because I got my get out of jail free card. And then when it comes to truth, well, that feels a little different. We start treating truth like the go to jail card, waiting for God just a wham, bam, go to jail. One mistake, you're out of here. You're just waiting for that one Christian to catch you, and they're just ready. And you know that Christian, they got that card in their hand. They're just waiting for you to make one itty-bitty mistake, a bam, go to jail or church. For some of you, this is why you ran away from church. You ran away from God. Why? Because all of a sudden, just bam, you got a go to jail card. You see, when it comes to grace and truth, we start playing this game. You see, for grace, the get out of jail free card, when it comes to our personal sin, my sin, we want God's grace. It's like a warm blanket, right? It's cozy. When it comes to my sin, the sin I've tried to stop, the sin I've prayed to God to help me stop, I want His grace. And even the sin that maybe I don't really want to stop. Because sometimes sin is fun. Now, sin always has a gotcha. It always leads to destruction. It always does, but it tries to convince us it's fun. And we just want to play that grace card to cover our sin, my sin, your sin. Yet when it comes to the sin we don't struggle with, we want to hand out our go to jail cards, don't we? The sin we don't get, the sin that we can't understand why someone would do that, would say that, there's a sin right now that you don't struggle with. And you've thought to yourself, I just can't believe that person would do that. Because you don't get it. And the sin we don't get, we don't struggle with, we've never been challenged with, we just got our go to jail cards ready because we're like, how could a Christian ever do that, say that? You fill in the blank. And we just have our game cards ready to play. You see, so many times when it comes to grace, truth, we want to run from the tension when those two words collide. And what's easy to do is we treat it like a game. We just kind of slip in between those two words, the word or. You see, the word or relieves the tension. It's grace or truth. And now we get to choose which one. We get to play our cards however we want to play them, whether personally for us or on other people. In fact, I was sharing this series with the staff several weeks ago, and I was talking about how all of us kind of slide between grace and truth. And I go, for some of you, you're truth people. And immediately, several staff members just shoot up their hands with this smile. And we all kind of laugh because we all kind of knew that, right? Just who they are, their personality. They lean towards truth. And I go, some of you are grace people, and they kind of got a smile on their face. I'm like, you know who you are. Just their personality leans more grace. And we all do this. We all kind of slide one way or the other, and usually how it benefits us. See, it's a game. But what we discover with grace truth is there's not an or there. There's an and. And the and, it creates the tension. It's grace and truth. And that tension, my encouragement in this entire series is for us to sit in the tension of the and between the collision of grace and truth. My prayer is that you'll embrace the grace and truth that God has extended to you, and that you will extend that same grace and truth to the people around you, to those connected with you. Today, we're going to be looking at something that the Apostle John wrote. Is found in the Gospel of John. Gospel of John just meaning it's the story of Jesus. And what's interesting about the Gospel of John is it was probably written some 45 to 50 years after Jesus left this earth. John sits down to write the story of Jesus. And I always think to myself, how did John just start writing the story? He had to be looking at this blank page going, I have no idea where to begin. And all of a sudden God whispered to him these three words, in the beginning. Now, for the Jewish audience reading these words, their mind would have gone directly back to Genesis chapter 1, the beginning of the ancient Jewish text, Genesis 1. Because how Genesis 1 starts is the same way, in the beginning. So John was pulling in this Jewish audience, and John was connecting a really significant solid line between the beginning of time and Jesus. Remember, this is how John chose to start the story of Jesus. He goes, in the beginning, it was the Word. Now, for the Jewish audience, that word is the Greek word logos. And that word logos can mean spoken word, but it could also mean kind of more of an internal philosophical reasoning. So with one word, logos, John would have connected with, the Jewish audience. Why? Because you go back to Genesis. How did God create the world? He spoke it into being. God spoke creation. So in the beginning was the Logos. And all of a sudden, again, the Jewish audience would be leaning in because they knew how God created the world. But remember, Logos also means this internal philosophical reasoning. And that word was foundational in the Greco-Roman culture. And so he would have them leaning in as well. And he writes, and the Word was with God. The Word, Jesus, was with God. It's a phrase that literally means towards God, facing God. That the Word, Jesus, was facing God himself in the beginning. And the Word was God. That Jesus, the Logos, the Word, was with God, and He is God, and He was partnered with God. Listen what he wrote. He goes, He was with God in the beginning, and through Him, all things were made. All things were created. And without Him, nothing was made. Nothing was created that has been made. And in Him, Jesus, was life. And that life was the light of all mankind. Now, What was the first thing that God created? That the Word, Jesus, created. What was the first thing that God spoke into existence? Well, we're told in Genesis chapter 1 that there's this darkness hovering over the void. And God spoke light, and then he separated light and darkness. And John tells us that the light shines in the darkness. And the darkness has not overcome it. The darkness has not conquered it. The darkness will never win. And then a few thoughts later, he expands a little bit more on the Word. He goes, the Word, again, this is the story of Jesus. The Word Jesus became flesh. The God the Son became man and made his dwelling among us. That word dwelling literally means to set up a tent or to set up camp. And this takes you all the way back to this moment of time where God was physically dwelling with the Israelites. In fact, they had this tent-like structure. It's called the tabernacle. And there, inside of that is where God dwelled. And then finally they got to the promised land and Solomon built the temple. And there was God's permanent dwelling place. And then John creates this connection point to Jesus. And he says, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling, set up camp. He tabernacled among us. And John was a we. John's like, hey, I was there. He goes, we have seen his glory, God's presence, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father. Think about this phrase, the one and only Son, who came from the Father. The one and only Son literally means one of a kind or unique. There's only one Jesus. Only one Son of God. One of a kind, unique, that came from the Father. And then he writes, full of grace and truth. Now, before we move on to this phrase, full of grace and truth, there's one thing I just want to highlight. You see, and this is really important. For you to grasp how God views grace and truth, you have to grasp how God views you. Because the more you understand how God views you, the clearer you will have a picture of how God views grace and truth that he's extended to you. You see, I go back to what John wrote. What was the title John chose right here specifically? What title for God did John write down? He wrote the word Father. You see, there's a richness that comes from understanding that God is eternal Father. And here's what I understand. For many of you, that's a very difficult reality to get your arms around. Because of your earthly father, who is non-existent, an earthly father who was absent, an earthly father that was abusive, an earthly father that showed no love, never said I love you, never hugged you, never was there for you, who abandoned you, walked out on you, who treated your mom like, or maybe you just never ever knew your dad. And here's what creates so much tension, and it breaks my heart for so many of you. Because when I think about God as Father, I think about my dad. Was he perfect? No. I got stories. But my dad spent his life pursuing a genuine, authentic relationship with God. My dad was a spiritual giant in my life. So when I think about God as Father, I have such a special image of that. For some of you, one of the most significant steps in your spiritual journey is to understand that God is a perfect Father who loves you deeply. And John writes that God the Father, the God is Father. And he goes, the Son coming from the Father, full of grace and truth. Not or, not just some grace and truth, not a high percentage of, but full, to the rim, overflowing. Grace and truth. And John writes, out of his fullness, we all have received grace in place of grace, in place of grace, in place of grace, already given. Remember, grace is a gift. It's being extended. You just have to receive it. And it's never ending. For the law was given through Moses, but grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. You see, Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5 that he didn't come to abolish the law, to get rid of the law, but he came to fulfill it. And how did he come to fulfill it? Full, completely, of grace and truth. You see, one of the most important things for you to embrace and to extend, I mean, this is a game changer in your spiritual journey and those God is using you to make an impact in as you extend grace and truth to them. You see, when it comes to us as a church, Tri-County Church, we are so committed to the pursuit of and, not or, when it comes to grace and truth. There's an author, his name is Randy Alcorn. He wrote a book called The Grace and Truth Paradox. And I just want to read this insight because I think this is the framework. If you're asking, Tri-County Church or Chris Trethewey or your campus pastor or your group leader, like, what's your stance? What's your belief? First of all, we just go to the Bible. That's our stance. That's our belief. But this is so important for us as a church to not just try to get right, but to hold on tightly to. This is what he writes. Truth without grace breeds a self-righteous legalism that poisons the church and pushes the world away from Christ. And for some of you, you ran away from a church like this, a self-righteous church. For some of you, you ran away from God because of that, self-righteous, truth-only church experience. But there's a flip side. And Randy goes, grace without truth breeds moral indifference and keeps people from seeing their need for Christ. And there's those churches out there where it's all just a one big warm blanket. I mean, they mass produce get out of jail free cards, right? Do whatever you want. God loves you. It doesn't matter. You see, that's grace or truth. He goes on, attempts to soften the gospel by minimizing truth, keep people from Jesus. And attempts to toughen the gospel by minimizing grace, keep people from Jesus. It's not enough for us to offer grace or truth. We must offer both. And I just want you to know, as a church, that is what our absolute commitment is to. The and that creates tension between grace and truth. And my encouragement for you, for all of us, is for us to resist the compulsion to release the tension between grace and truth. We'll want to. We'll want to release that tension because none of us likes to sit in tension. Like if you've ever been in an intense discussion with your spouse, your husband or wife, a boyfriend, girlfriend, right? You don't like that. If you've ever been in an intense discussion with your supervisor, an employee, right? We don't like that. If you've ever been in an intense discussion with one of your kids, right? Like we just don't like the tension. And I'm just saying we got to resist the compulsion to release the tension. Because it's in the tension, it's in the and of grace and truth that we see God's heart. That we see his heart. This is a picture of love. And again, the more we understand how God views us, the more we'll understand the grace and truth that he's given to us. The more we'll embrace the grace and truth. And the more we'll extend that to other people. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to look at 2 very specific stories. And I'm just telling you, there's a lot of tension in these 2 stories. A lot of tension between the grace side and the truth side. I'm just telling you, there's going to be moments in the next 2 weeks where you're going to say, but Chris, you're going to feel that within you. I'm just telling you, you're going to feel that. But Chris, and you're going to want to play your, get out of jail free card. You're going to want to play your go directly to jail card. You're going to feel that. My encouragement as we make our way through this series, Collision, as you feel that tension arise, that you lean into the grace and truth. So that's where we're going in the next 2 weeks. But this week, this is my encouragement. This is my homework, if you want to frame it that way, for you just to focus on this week. I want you to focus on God as Father. For some of you, this is going to be life-giving. Like me, I'll just be honest. It's a very life-giving. Even though there's sorrow, there's grief attached to it because my dad's not here. It's still really life-giving. For some of you, this is going to be the most difficult thing. For some of you, you're not going to get past line 1. You're going to get stuck there. But when you focus in on God as Father, if you are a dad, I want you to focus in on the call that God has placed within you as a spiritual leader. Now, moms, I'm not saying you're not important. Don't hear that at all. I'm just saying, hey, dads, when God chose to use the title Father for us to view him as, there's a weightiness that comes to us dads. Hey, dads, are you the spiritual leader that God has called you to be? I'm not saying perfect. I said this early on. My dad was not perfect, but I saw my dad pursue God and extend that to me. Hey, dads, how's your spiritual growth going? How's your spiritual journey? Are you the spiritual leader God has called you to be? Because your son, your daughter is going to view God the Father through you. And I don't want that to be guilt. I want that to be encouragement. Because it's that important. So this week, spend some time with God as Father, who sent Jesus, the Word becoming flesh, set up camp, set up his tent, dwelling with us. That Jesus is God with us. Spend some time with that. Because the more you grasp how Jesus lived, the more you grasp how Jesus loved, the more you grasp how Jesus led, change you from the inside out. The Son of God, who faced towards God, who was with God, who created this world completely full of grace and truth. when it comes to grace and truth, what game are you playing? What cards do you have? How are you playing those cards? Are you playing them one way to yourself, and are you looking just to throw them at other people? How are you going to remove or? And how are you going to start, leaning into the tension of the and? Spend some time here this week. Next week, we'll look at the first story and see how Jesus sat in the tension, resisted the compulsion to remove the tension between grace and truth. Let's pray. Lord, I pray for those who are struggling to view you as God because of their earthly dad. Lord, I just pray that there's a healing journey that they'll take to heal from that so that they can view you as a loving, perfect Father. Lord, I pray for every dad that they'll pursue you. It's not about perfection. It's not about putting on a show for their kids, but them loving you and loving their kids, to be the spiritual leader you have called them to be, because the heaviness is our kids are going to view you as Father through us. Lord, I pray that we'll lean into the reality that you sent your Son Jesus to be with us, personal, present. And Lord, that we'll just recognize that maybe, just maybe, we've been playing a big game between grace and truth. And maybe, just maybe, we've just inserted the word or. And maybe, just maybe, this week, we need to stop playing the game and lean into the tension of the fullness of your truth and grace. In your name I pray. Amen.